Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome into another YouTube live show. I am John Kurtz. Looking forward to this one here tonight. Welcome in. Hope you're having a great Sunday. Brett Yormark has spoken. We've got some Brett Yormark audio to get to here as he did a pretty wide-ranging interview with the Fox crew. Okay, this is the Triple Option podcast with Urban Meyer, Mark Ingram, and Rob Stone. It's enjoyable, and frankly, I would suggest that you go listen to the whole thing. I am going to hit on a couple of the highlights here because Brett Yormark spoke pretty in depth about private equity, which confirmed a prior suspicion that I had about the Big 12's pursuit or lack thereof right now. But more importantly, he spoke really for the first time, as far as I can tell, publicly and pretty emphatically about why he is supporting the 5+11 playoff format, which has drawn a wide range of criticism, certainly from a fellow Fox guy in Joel Klatt, as well as Josh Pate and many others across the college football world that think it is stupid for the Big 12 to be pushing for 5+11 instead of 4-4-2-2-1. So you'll get to hear exactly why it is that Brett Yormark is doing that. We're going to start here in just a moment, as you can see on the outline, with a Big 12 Mount Rushmore, which is because we got a great question coming in via Venmo, which John-Kurtz-4 is how you can contribute to the show on Venmo. And if you do that with a question or comment, I will kick off the next show with it. So even if you are not joining us live tonight, you can still be a part of all of that. I want to keep you a part of the conversation. And obviously your support is very, very much appreciated. Those of you who are here watching live know you click the $ below the chat box. That is how you can be a part of things as well. It will submit a super chat, which means that your question or comment is guaranteed to make it on the show here tonight. Please like the video. Please do subscribe. All of that stuff helps. It is totally free. Comment away tonight in the chat and then like and subscribe this video. And make sure you subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. OFBnews.com. That's OFBnews.com to get subscribed to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Totally free, 4,400 plus Big 12 fan subscribers twice a week to your inbox. I'm breaking down the big stories, letting you know what it means for the Big 12 and keeping you up to date on all the day-to-day news. Totally for free. Again, OFBnews.com. Click the link in the description of this video. You could do that as well. The one last topic, as you can see at the bottom there, boy, Texas Tech has just broken the SEC's brains. And it's kind of a fun story. It's a really interesting one. Perhaps ominous if you're somebody who's going to be competing against Texas Tech in any sport recently. But I want to break down some of those angles coming up later on as well. So, like I said, we start with a comment from Venmo. It is my good friend Julius Maximus. Thank you, Julius, for your contribution as always. It is great to hear from you. And I appreciate this, Julius. I really appreciate that you gave me a heads up on this instead of springing it on me during a live show. That was very, very kind of you because I wanted to be able to give a more thoughtful response to this. So what about a Mount Rushmore, guys? What about a Big 12 football coach Mount Rushmore? I've never been asked this before, but Julius Maximus comes through on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo to leave me a question or comment there. And Julius says, howdy, John. I want to give you a question with some time to think about it. Again, much appreciated. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of all-time coaches in the current Big 12? So by that, I take that to mean by the schools that are currently in the Big 12. Who's on the Mount Rushmore of coaches there? We're not talking about Bob Stoops. Okay, Texas and Oklahoma can get the hell out of here. Julia says, I would think that Bill Snyder has to be there. Leach, Gundy, Charlie Weiss. That's nicely done there, Julius. And then he closes with, does LaVell make it? Asking about legendary BYU coach LaVell Edwards. So I had some fun with this. Honestly, I had fun looking up the full resume of LaVell Edwards, by the way, Julius, on this. And I will tell you in just a moment if he made it. Let me start with some outside looking in, guys who were close but didn't quite make the cut, one of whom I think is going to be very controversial. So Mount Rushmore, you get to pick four, right? You get the four that you would put up there as the best most representative of the conference. I suppose that's somewhat up for interpretation. I'm basically going with best, who I think had the best resumes overall. Look, Bill McCartney at Colorado, he has a national championship. I just, that total resume didn't compare to me to the four guys that I wound up choosing here. But I do think only two of these coaches that are going to be mentioned in the video have won national championships. Bill McCartney is one, so that at least gets him some honorable mention here on this list. Had a really, really great 3 or 4 year run there, but not the consistency and longevity of a lot of these other coaches, some of whom came very, very close to winning a national championship, even though they didn't. Don Nehlen at West Virginia, obviously a legend over there. College Football Hall of Famer. He did have a couple of top 10 finishes. He had 2 11-win seasons. Impressive. Definitely some longevity, but not quite the high highs and not quite as, a lot of these guys were winning 9-10 games almost every single year. I didn't see that same level of consistency from Don Nehlen at West Virginia, but he deserves mention. Mike Leach, man. Mike Leach, it kind of killed me to not put him on here, but Mike Leach definitely is within reach. Obviously a very innovative coach, one of the most beloved. And a part of what made it especially painful to not include him is just he's such a character, right? And everybody knows him. And that, I think, is one place where you have to maybe make an exception to just strictly keeping it to resume, right? Like Mike Leach kind of transcended the sport almost in terms of what a personality he was. He certainly transcended the Big 12 or the SEC, where he then coached for a while. But that maybe was something to take into account too. He did rack up a lot of credibility, and it seemed like people really came around on him more in terms of just creating a beloved figure when he got to the SEC. So, a lot of people would think of him as more like the Mississippi State head coach. He also spent a lot of time at Washington State, right? It had been a long time since he had been in the Big 12. But Leach was close. Leach is close. Frankly, if not for the controversy, Art Briles is somebody I think you would have to consider for the turnaround job that he put together at Baylor. And here's the one that's going to be controversial, guys, because I'm still on outside looking in before we get to the 4. It's Kyle Whittingham. Kyle Whittingham, very close. Very, very close to making it. He has 7 10-plus win seasons, a 13-0 season. Shout out to the Utah Utes beating Alabama in the Sugar Bowl once upon a time. He's got a National Coach of the Year. He's got the longevity, been there over 2 decades. He is going to be in the College Football Hall of Fame. He is an excellent coach. Okay. But he is not quite on this list. Not quite on this list. And in fact, I initially had Kyle Whittingham on this list until I really put his resume under the microscope with the first coach that I'm going to mention who makes the Big 12 football coach Mount Rushmore. And that is Gary Patterson. Okay. Gary Patterson at TCU. I mean, similar, if we're talking about just guys that had a similar path, it's Gary Patterson and Kyle Whittingham. Started out at schools that were at similar levels and had a ton of success at those lower level conferences. And then they move up, they get the call up to the big leagues, and they still have a bunch of success there, have some really high level seasons, winning conference championships, going to New Year's 6 bowls. The thing with Gary Patterson's resume compared to Kyle Whittingham's is just, I felt like the highs were higher. There were a couple of higher highs because not only does he match the unbeaten 13-0 season that Kyle Whittingham had, Gary Patterson literally did that, won the Rose Bowl. Kyle Whittingham did that, won the Sugar Bowl. So that almost cancels each other out. But he also had that run in 2014 where, frankly, he should have been a playoff team. This is a team that's going to get mentioned twice on the show tonight, more on this later. But Gary Patterson was the number 3 team in the college football playoff rankings heading into the final weekend. He beat Iowa State by 50 and then got passed over by Ohio State. And I think Baylor also, right? Did they wind up at number 6? They dropped from 3 to 6. Anyway, should have been in. And then they won the Peach Bowl. So there was another New Year's 6 bowl win, and that was a team that was national championship caliber. They were right there, should have been in the playoff. Gary Patterson had 3 BCS/New Year's 6 bowl appearances, had tons of longevity, 10 double-digit win seasons. I just felt like another huge high there for Gary Patterson. I had to give him the nod over Kyle Whittingham. Now, maybe you would get some pushback for the next one as well from a Utah fan. It is Mike Gundy. I'm going to put Mike Gundy on this Mount Rushmore. Some of this may also be influenced a bit, I will admit, with Gundy, where his whole career has been in the Big 12, whereas Kyle Whittingham, new onto the scene here, right? So if you are thinking about a Mount Rushmore, yes, you want it to be best, but there is an element here of who is representing the conference. It's how do you do a current a Big 12 football coaches of the current conference without putting Mike Gundy on there, a guy who's been doing it now for 2 decades at Oklahoma State with an immense amount of success, 8 double-digit win seasons. He's obviously got the 2011 run where he flirted with a national championship. They are one inexplicable loss in Ames away from playing for a national title, and even then they were just minuscule BCS computer points away from still playing for a national championship. That team was legitimate national title good. He is a 3-time Big 12 Coach of the Year. He has won a National Coach of the Year award. He is definitely going to be a Hall of Famer. It was a turnaround job. That was not a great job when he took it over. And he is just an iconic college football figure, an absolute iconic college football figure. So I think Gundy absolutely deserves it for all of those reasons. He is a big-time representative of the Big 12. I'm seeing some of you guys in the comments are talking about Bob Stoops, Mac Brown, Bill Self. We're doing football coaches of teams that are currently in the conference, guys. Football coaches that are from teams currently in the conference. Okay, those are the parameters. And so Gary Patterson and Mike Gundy are the first 2. Next, I've got to go with, you can call it a homer pick or whatever, but man, it's not. Bill Snyder is going to be one of those coaches on Mount Rushmore. Bill Snyder took over what Sports Illustrated called the worst program in college football history. The year before he took it over, Sports Illustrated and College Football Preview magazine wrote this big preview article. Literally SI would do the whole season preview. They took time out to do Doug Looney, shout out to Doug Looney, an article calling K-State the worst program in college football history. It was an article called Futility U. And within 2 years, Bill Snyder had won 5 games. Within 4 years, he had won 9, including a bowl game. And within 10 years, he had K-State ranked number 1 in the country. Literally took over the worst program in the country. Within 10 years, had them ranked number 1. He won 11 games 6 times in 7 years at one point at the Big 12 level. He had 7 11-win seasons overall. 10 times he won double-digit games. And he's got the second turnaround as well, right? He also took a K-State team to number 1 after retiring and then coming back. And he is active college football Hall of Famer. So, yeah, Bill Snyder has to be up there. Has to be in there. And finally, I'm going to close with this, guys. I didn't think this was really particularly close at all. Julius Maximus was asking, hey, is LaVell Edwards going to be good enough to get in there? LaVell Edwards is absolutely emphatically on this, man. Hell of a resume. I knew the guy was really, really good, but it was fun to go back and look at this. Hell of a resume. He's got a national championship. So, again, like I mentioned with Bill McCartney, when we're talking about a league that has 2 football national championships right now, if you won one of those, you got to be on there if you have the longevity to go along with it, which McCartney did not. LaVell Edwards absolutely does. It is crazy to start looking at it. You start looking so we get to 76. It's 9 wins, 9, 11, 12, 11, 8, 11, 13, 11. Crazy. This guy just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And the 13 in there, by the way, was the national championship season for BYU. Beyond that, he's got a Heisman winner, 4 Davey O'Brien Award winners. There, I think I saw 6 All-American quarterbacks. Obviously, he's very revolutionary with the passing offense, but he still had a Doak Walker Award winner, a Maxwell Award winner, College Football Hall of Famer, 10 double-digit win seasons. How about an insane coaching tree? I just mentioned Mike Leach. I didn't know this until I was reading up about this, that Mike Leach, I guess you could say maybe not officially a part of the coaching tree, but he would sit in on film sessions with LaVell Edwards way back when he was in school at BYU. So in essence, you could throw him on there, but start looking at this coaching tree. Kalani Sitake, Andy Reid, Brian Billick. Right? There's a couple Super Bowl winning coaches we just named there. Man, the great Norm Chow, legendary offensive coordinator. Steve Sarkisian, Mike Holmgren. Yeah, we're going to put LaVell Edwards on this thing. I don't think there's like a more accomplished coach that has ever coached for any of these schools in the conference. So there you have it. There is your Big 12 current conference football coaches, Mount Rushmore. Bill Snyder, LaVell Edwards, Mike Gundy, Gary Patterson. That's what we're going with. But you guys can light me up in the comments if you want. That is totally fine. Let me know who I'm missing. Let me know who should be up there. Let me know what's wrong about it. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. All of that is great. Much appreciate that. Fong Wei, I'm going to bring this up real quick. Bill Snyder is the GOAT in all of Division I. This is where I suppose, I'll put on my Homer hat a little bit. You can definitely make that case. And people will like cringe at that and lose their mind because he didn't have a national championship. He had just the 2 conference titles. He's doing a lot of his damage there when Nebraska was at the peak of its power and when Colorado was still very, very good. That halted some of the conference title stuff. But, dude, people just don't understand. And this is where there is that Foundation documentary that's out there on YouTube that does chronicle some of how bad it was when Bill Snyder took it over. But, you can find old quotes from Bob Stoops talking about how they didn't have enough linemen to practice when they first took over that program. And again, within 5 years, he's winning 9 games. Within 10 years, he has it number 1 team in the country. Barry Switzer called him, he's not the coach of the year. He's the coach of the century, I believe was the Barry Switzer quote. Like, to understand the depths of how bad that program was and what he did with the turnaround. And then the fact that twice he got very close to a national championship, extremely close. He had the best team in the country in 1998. They lost in double overtime and blew a 17-point lead to Texas A&M, or they would have played for a national championship. But anyway, yeah, you can make that case, Fong Wei. You can make that case. Okay. The eye patch, we're no Texas included here. Remember the parameters. Current Big 12 schools. Okay. This will be a bit of a stark transition. All right. Welcome back to the current realities of college athletics. Okay. But we finally know why Brett Yormark has this emphatic stance for the 5+11 college football playoff model, which would be 5 automatic qualifiers, conference champs, and then 11 at-large bids. He has spoken about it for the first time that I have seen publicly. The real question here is, based on his logic and based on everything he said, is he being too naive? Is Brett Yormark being too naive in leading the Big 12 down this path instead of accepting 2 auto bids that would be there in the other plan that is being discussed? Okay. So this all comes from the Triple Option podcast. Rob Stone, Urban Meyer, Mark Ingram, basically the Fox crew that you see on Big Noon Kickoff. It's those guys doing their podcast. They brought Brett Yormark on. He had a lot to say. I mean, I was skeptical going in, just like, okay, they're Fox. They're like an official partner of the league here. How much will they really push him? How much will they really ask? How much will they really get out of him? I was intrigued. I thought this was better than I would have anticipated because of that. Now, some of that is just, Brett Yormark was more forthcoming with information. But I'm not going to give you this exact quote from Brett Yormark, but I will say he opened up. I know so many are skeptical. So many across college athletics are very skeptical about the ability of the College Sports Commission to be able to actually enforce the NIL rules, parameters that have been set up here, basically enforcing fair market value on this. Most people think they won't be able to, or it won't hold up to scrutiny in court, or people will just be cheating and handing out cash under the table anyway. Brett Yormark came in about as strong as you possibly can, that the guardrails are there. It is going to work. They will be able to adjudicate this. There is nothing to worry about. He was very strong in that. And it was even in the face of, like, he got asked that by Urban Meyer, who was basically saying, I mean, straight up, I think he used the term BS, but just actually said that out loud. Like basically that the NCAA has no teeth, that the NCAA would not be able to enforce any of this because he had seen time and again examples of the NCAA not being able to effectively enforce things when he was a head coach. So there's that. And Brett Yormark was still just like, no, we got it. I think we'll do this. And he got Urban Meyer to get to the point where he was like, okay, well, congratulations. That sounds great. So he kind of backed Urban Meyer down. And I will drop this nugget in too. It's this whole podcast is worth listening to just to hear Urban Meyer complaining at one point about the selection committee and how he doesn't like the 5+11 playoff format as much because it still involves the selection committee and how much error could be there. Man, has there been a coach that has benefited more? Maybe Nick Saban, but outside of that, I don't know that there's a coach that's benefited more from the selection committee over the time that we've had one in the college football playoff than Urban Meyer. The guy has one of his national championships literally came because of the selection committee. And this is where I again mention the 2014 TCU Horned Frogs. Like Ohio State got the jump into the playoff over those two, the TCU and Baylor tied Big 12 co-champs into the college football playoff. And then he eventually won that national championship. He got a hell of a kiss there when TCU was at number 3 and won by 50 and then fell out. Like, of all the people that complain about that, an Ohio State head coach, and then Urban Meyer, who personally benefited with a national championship from that. I had to laugh at that, had to chuckle very, very hard at that. Anyway, the playoff format is why you're all here. It's what is most interesting about this. So Brett Yormark was asked by Rob Stone, what was your reaction? The way he phrased it was like, what was your reaction to first hearing about the 4-4-2-2-1 plan, right? Okay, so 4-4-2-2-1 plan. That is your plan being championed by the Big Ten. It would be 4 auto bids for the SEC and Big Ten, 2 for the ACC and Big 12. And here is what Brett Yormark had to say.
And I didn't like it because I just felt that it created a huge divide between us and those two conferences. Now, as you guys know, I have good self-awareness. I know where we reside in the world of college football. But I just felt that it put a line in the sand that didn't need to be there. Okay, I'm a firm believer in that, you know, if you create value, you should be rewarded, earn it on the field. Okay, every year's a new year. And by the way, with settlement, in theory, it should be creating a level playing field across the board. I've got a great relationship with my colleagues, you know, within the Power Four. And I do believe that we will ultimately get to a place that is good for all of us. It might not be great for all of us, but it'll be good for all of us.
Okay. Did that not sound exactly like the explanation that I and many others, I'm not claiming that I was brilliant here, but it sounded exactly like what everybody was saying when this happened. Like people were questioning. I got questions on Twitter from people that read the newsletter all over the place. Like, why is Yormark doing this? This doesn't seem to make much sense. Josh Payton, Joel Klatt, their pitch, their case seems to really make sense. Like this will be worse. Less Big 12 teams will get in the playoff. More SEC teams will get in the playoff. That will widen the gap. Why would you do this? Said it was all about codifying it. You don't want to put in pen, we are half the conference of the SEC and Big Ten for a wide variety of reasons. And that's what Brett Yormark just told you there. We don't need to put a line in the sand that is unnecessary. Why would we put that line in the sand when we don't have to? Maybe it will, he's not saying this part, but maybe it will happen anyway because we don't really have an option. The Big Ten and the SEC can make the final decision on this. They can do whatever it is that they want. That's how it's written into the contract. But we're not going to voluntarily do that to ourselves. We don't want to do that to ourselves. We don't want to signal that to the rest of the world. We don't want to signal that to recruits. We don't want to signal that to coaches that we're trying to keep around in our conference. We don't want to signal that to future business partners who could look at that and say, all right, well, you're definitely not getting a penny more than half of what the SEC or Big Ten is getting. We don't want to do that for any of those strategic reasons. And that's what Brett Yormark just confirmed there. So I hate to break it to you. If you are somebody that does really want the 4-4-2-2-1, I guess I'll just say it seems like he is very confident in his position. and even confident, I guess, in the position of, hey, we'll get something that's okay. Now, that's, that's a very loose way to say that. That leaves a lot of room for interpretation on what could happen that could be good for everybody. He said not great for everybody, but good for everybody. But as far as his decision on 4-4-2-2-1 and 5+11, Brett Yormark's not a dumb guy. He also admitted there, one thing I would point out that is key to pay attention to is he admitted, like, hey, I've got self-awareness about where we are at. This is not a guy, if you think that this is somebody who is Brett Yormark just way off his rocker and thinks way too much of the league and like, oh, we'll be great. We've got programs on the rise. We'll start rocketing up the rankings and we will have 3 teams in the top 16 every year. No, Brett Yormark is not dumb. He understands and has self-awareness, which you would have to. If you guys have seen how the SEC and the Big Ten act. If you're in a room with Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey, you're going to get some self-awareness pretty quick, at least of what they think about you. Because the way that they are making moves right now, they're not here to appease anybody for no reason. So he's been in those rooms, guys. He is very well aware of where the Big 12 is actually at. But he also knows, like, we can't just willingly back down. That's not how we win this fight long term, is by willingly back down. So it's clear that is the motivation there. Now we have like official confirmation from Brett Yormark. He has said it. I'll be interested to hear. I mean, we're a little bit under a month. We're like just over 3 weeks, I believe, away from Big 12 Media Days. I will be interested to hear and see what Brett Yormark has to say there, if anything has changed by that point in time or what his tone will be there. Now, is he being naive? I mean, I think some of the critics here would say, yes, he's being naive in that he seems to think there is a chance that over the long term, the Big 12 can be more than half of what the Big 10 and the SEC are. And certainly like Big 12 haters would say that. That's a very naive take to think that. But even I think a lot of people within the Big 12, I saw a lot of criticism from concerned Big 12 fans over this. I think they would say, some of them, this is a bit naive from him to think that there's a chance to do more. But even as I say that, man, it's like, do you hear the words coming out of my mouth? That's just such a depressing thought and way to say it and think about it. Like, oh, there will never be more for us. There will never be more for us. I mean, I can barely get it out of my mouth without almost like gagging on that. Like, come on, I said it's Braveheart. Someone's handing you a sword. Take it and go fight. Sword, spear, whatever it is they have there. And get ready, man. Go be on the front lines with this thing. But I do think some would say, hey, this is foolish because you're not just taking the best that you can get and you're being too naive about what your place in the world is. You could also say, hey, that part at the end about how we're going to get a good solution for everybody, that could be perceived as a bit naive. Now, that also may just be him saying what he feels like he needs to say publicly. But I would look at that and say, if really with the SEC and Big Ten ultimately having all that power and you think it's going to be and they're already fighting, by the way, over this format because they're at odds, they disagree, that we're going to come up with something that's good for everybody. I don't know. That does feel like it could be, if we're taking that at face value from Brett Yormark, that does feel like it could be a little bit naive. More likely it's somebody is going to win this power struggle. Most likely, obviously, it's going to be SEC Big Ten centric, but even between them, somebody will win that battle and be more happy than the other. And you're going to have some people that are unhappy at the end of the day, or maybe it takes a different iteration. We get some kind of different format that's probably going to go to the point where it will be maybe an okay deal for you. Very good to great for the Big Ten, SEC, perhaps a little bit naive. But I just close with this. And some of you roll your eyes, I'm sure, at this every time I say it, because I know there are some that just don't, maybe not a ton, but I know a faction of people that are just never really seem to be that on board with Brett Yormark. I would say a lot of them are a little bit more like on the casual end, like not paying as much attention and as in the weeds on all of this as I have to be, and as many of you are that watch this channel, which is totally fine, by the way. But when I listen to him talk, especially with this, and especially with issues that are as important as this and as complex as this, the guy is just really confident, man. The guy speaks with confidence. He speaks like a leader. He speaks like somebody who is very forward thinking and innovative. And I love all that. Doesn't mean anything in terms of it being guaranteed to work. Yes, I know. You could find me a million examples of really charismatic leaders who were terribly off in their convictions and what they tried to do and that things failed horribly. I know that it doesn't actually mean anything. It's not necessarily substantive, but damn it, it is really nice after what the leadership of the league was like for so long. And I'm a guy who I defend Bob Bowlesby. I think he got too much criticism at the end of his tenure when Texas and Oklahoma were leaving. I think he did a pretty good job, but man, he was not that. Like, you listen to Bob Bowlesby talk, you're not coming away thinking the same thing that you are when you listen to Brett Yormark talk. So, pretty good interview. Again, I would suggest it. Triple Option Podcast. Go listen to the whole thing. I've got a little more coming at you on the private equity front here in just a moment. But please do take a second to like the video if you are here. That would mean a lot to me. Same if you would subscribe to the channel. Many of you who watch are not subscribed. It's very easy. Just takes one click. Subscribe to the channel, please. Everybody in the chat, if you want to make sure your question or comment gets on tonight, you can submit a super chat by clicking the $ below the chat box. I appreciate everybody who does that. And you can hit me up on Venmo. It's John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to leave a question or comment there. If you do that, I will kick off the next show with it. So you can still be a part of the conversation, even if you're not watching live. And if you're like Julius Maximus and you leave an outstanding question, I may just devote an entire segment of the show to it. So thank you again for that, Julius, earlier today, giving us all a little bit of fun and a little bit of a reprieve from what the content has typically been like here with the House settlement and the playoff format and everything going on, like what the content has to be these days in college athletics. On that front, did you guys see Paul Finebomb was kind of taking a page out of my old radio playbook? Like, that was like, man, that's content. I kind of miss doing stuff that was a little bit more fun like that when I was doing a radio show where, it felt a little bit more appropriate to just really lean into those summer days. But Paul Finebomb, I just saw it had a tweet out the other day that was like, clearly kind of like, and I know this has a negative connotation. I think it's fine if you're doing a show and you're trying to get feedback, but basically like engagement farming by putting out the question, what is the worst first date story that you have? Like, man, the SEC must be really feeling the heat of the summer, and I guess nothing going on, but it feels to me like there's everything going on. I'm like, if that's not just like a June sports radio topic in a college town, which I know that very, very well, I don't know what is. Like, Paul Feinbaum's the last guy I would think would be talking about a first day. When was Paul Finebaum? It's the last first date he went on 45 years ago. I shouldn't do this. I'm sorry, Paul. I won't come after you for your age. But that was quite a thing. And I was like, oh man, maybe I need to get back on this, doing content the way I used to do it on radio and talk about really ridiculous fun things like that all the time. Anyway, well, here's private equity. On that note, here's private equity. Okay, look. Remember when Brett Yormark said the Big 12 wasn't going to go down the private equity road? Like, that road was shut off for right now. This happened very, very recently, right? It was not that long ago. But I'm going to say it again. In the words of Lee Corso, not so fast, my friend. Not so fast, my friend. And hey, if you're really worried about where this all ultimately leads, because, hey, private equity, they can take ownership of the conference. They can really strip it for parts and leave it left for dead. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by this segment. Okay, so just stay tuned there. If you're somebody that has a lot of concern about what would happen if the Big 12 does indulge in private equity and just college sports in general, for that matter. Like, I understand why it's scary. I understand why you don't like it. Majority of the stories that we hear about private equity are very negative, that they do strip things for parts. There's no actual care for, what's there, what's been built. It's just all about extracting as much money as you can while you can and however you can. And that it would be a terrible thing to open Pandora's box like that. I'm not here to tell you it's a good thing that it is involved in the college athletic space already, or at least coming very, very close to being really officially involved in the college athletic space. I'm not saying that's a good thing at all. I'm not saying I like that at all. I am saying it appears to be the reality, unfortunately, folks. It appears to be the reality of where we're at because the SEC is talking to Goldman Sachs, reported by Ross Dellinger. The Big Ten, even before the SEC reports came out, they have been meeting with multiple different private equity partners here. Like, it is coming. Nobody has taken that first step yet. But when these things are getting reported and with everything happening in college athletics and how much money drives everything and how much more money people need to come up with now, schools need to come up with now in light of revenue sharing, guys, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Now, there's been a little bit of premature reporting on this, like the UCLA Penn State. It was like reported very briefly last week that they had actually officially hopped on board with a private equity partner. And it turned out that was more like, I think they were the entity was helping with like ticketing, and that got misconstrued as like that they were a private equity partner with them. So it maybe not quite as far down that road as it looked like at one point last week, but it's still, all the indications are that it is coming. And this is why the Big 12 for like a year now has been at least exploring this topic, because they don't want to fall behind. Like, the message here is, do you want to adapt to the reality or do you want to fall behind? And if the answer is, hey, I just don't want a college sports world where private equity is involved, like, that's fine. And you can get off the train and not worry about it. But the train is moving forward, and like, that's what it's going to be. And that's kind of been my choice in this whole thing. I don't like a lot of stuff that's happening in college sports, but I can either get off the train or I can still try to get enjoyment out of whatever the new system is, give it a shot, see what happens. That's basically where I'm at. But if you are somebody that didn't want the Big 12 to open up the private equity door, you were happy last week, no doubt, when Front Office Sports did an interview with Brett Yormark at Big 12 spring meetings. And these are the quotes where he said right now, Big 12 is not going down the private equity road. He said, quote, "We explored all that. We did it probably for the better part of the year. We're not ready to go in that direction, but we know what the options are out there. We've been educated at the highest levels." When he was pushed a little bit more as to like, why would you not do it now? He said, quote, "The board's not ready right now. And there's probably lots of reasons for that. There are so many different things going on right now, but I think we're well informed." Okay. When I read those quotes, I had some people like texting me like, "Oh man, like, whoa, that's kind of a bombshell, right? Big 12 not going to do private equity." To me, it was pretty And I don't even think I brought it up as a separate topic here on the show, because to me, it was just like, well, yeah, I mean, like right now, okay, so like right this second, they're not going to do it. Yeah, sure, fine. But that's going to change at some point, because that bottle of toothpaste is open. It's out of the tube. People are like, conferences are meeting with private equity. Schools are meeting with private equity. Someone's going to make that move at some point. If I know anything about college athletics and what is driving everything in the sport, it's going to happen. And then you'll have to follow suit or you'll fall way too far behind. So yeah, like, okay, maybe for right now, you can't get the presidents on board with that, but it will happen eventually. And after listening to what Brett Yormark said on this podcast, again, the Triple Option podcast with the Fox crew, I am very, very convicted in saying that. Very, very convicted. So here's Brett Yormark with a little bit more on the future of the Big 12 and private equity, namely that he already knows who the partner would be if and when it is that they're going to do it.
To the extent that I could identify, and I did, a strategic partner who also brings capital when we might or might not need it, to me was the right fit. We've pressed pause on that right now, but we've done enough due diligence to understand that if there was a moment in time where we wanted to go down a particular path, we know exactly where to go.
So there you go. Brett Yormark knows exactly what they would do. And that's how, like, if the answer was, hey, the Big 12 is just passing on this, you're not going to do it, why would you already have that lined up? Why would you already have everything all ready to go? All you need to do is say the word, hit the button. We have all the information. We've met with the partner. We've done all this vetting. You wouldn't go through that work if it wasn't something you felt like you were going to do eventually. Brett Yormark's got a lot on his plate. I heard him saying that in another part of the interview, like, yeah, there's just so much going on right now. It's crazy. And we have to be up on all of it. when you've got all that on your plate, you wouldn't go out of your way to put extra work on your plate about private equity if you weren't going to pull the trigger on that sometime. This is a guy that's a forward thinker. That's going to happen, guys. I'm just here to tell I'm here to tell you that that's going to happen, and listening to something like that made me feel much, much more convicted that it was going to happen. Okay, let's see. Yes, there is one more quote here on the private equity front from Brett Yormark. And let's see. Oh, yes. For those of you who are concerned, I forgot. I have not assuaged your concerns, right? If you are somebody that's not a fan of private equity in the Big 12, you're all worked up now. John, you're telling me this is going to happen no matter what. And Yormark seems like, boy, all right, he's got this all lined up. He's ready to go. If you are concerned about somebody coming in, stripping the conference for parts and all that, let me just share this with you to hopefully assuage some of those fears. Brett Yormark says he's not going to legitimately sell a piece of the conference off.
Do we bring a strategic partner in that can help us grow our revenue, that brings strategic expertise in the right areas, while also serving as a capital partner if and when we need it? Okay. So I was looking at it a little differently, because I didn't want to give anyone a stake in our conference. I'm very bullish on the future, and I don't want to give up any of our upside, because we're in the growth mode right now. And I think the future is really bright for us. And I don't want to share that with any third party.
Some of the early reporting surrounding the Big 12 and private equity was with some of that in mind, right? It was around the idea that the Big 12 could be selling off. I'm trying to remember what that specific number was, 15%, 20% stake in the conference. And this is now Brett Yormark saying, hey, don't panic. Don't freak out. That's not what we're going to do. He believes so much in the upside of the conference. He doesn't want it tied to hey, you're going to get X percent of whatever the league is or whatever we make moving forward, because I think that's going to be a hell of a lot of money. So apparently he's exploring different avenues. Now, if you come back and say to me, John, how exactly does that work? All I know is that there's been talk of difference between private capital and private equity. And I know there are different ways to do it. I am a guy with a comms degree from a state school. I don't have a big finance degree from an Ivy League or something like that. So I don't know exactly how that goes. But Brett Yormark at least is trying to reassure you there. It's not going to be like every school is selling a stake in their athletic department, and if things start going south, the private equity firm would have the legal rights to start cutting sports and things like that. That was some of the panic I saw from people early on when private equity became a conversation here. Brett Yormark is trying to tell you that that's not going to be something that will be an issue. Now, I guess you could say, I don't trust him. Well, fine. That's your prerogative. But that at least is what he is saying right now. So I don't think this is over, man. I think right now, if nobody else has done it, I think the reason you're seeing Yormark with a quote right now we're tabling it, because no one else is doing it. And university presidents are going to be a really tough sell on private equity. That's, good luck getting them to sign off on it. The way you can is if it's a pressure point, oh man, hey, see, the SEC and the Big Ten, they're doing it. They're already way ahead of us. You want them to be way, way ahead of us and lose athletics as a real front door to your university because you just can't compete at all, then don't sign on the dotted line here. But we got to do this now. That's what it's going to take. So I guess if you want to say it doesn't look like the Big 12 will be the first conference to go get in bed with private equity or private capital. Yeah, it does kind of seem like that. But I still think that it is going to happen. I at least am going to give him some credit with that quote. It seems like he's taking a pretty measured approach with that and has an idea of hey, we're not going to just open this door to anybody who will be able to run roughshod in here, depending on what happens with the future of the league. So anyway, some thoughts on what Brett Yormark had to say about private equity there. Please do like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. All that really helps. Subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com, or you can click the link in the description of this video to do that. We have got 4,400 plus Big 12 fan subscribers. Appreciate everybody who has subscribed. And twice a week, straight to your inbox, totally for free. Breaking down the big stories in college athletics and how they affect the Big 12, because you're not going to find that anywhere. It's going to be about the Big 10 and the SEC. I'm keeping you up to date on everything with the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter at ofbnews.com. Okay, now here's what I know Texas Tech fans have been waiting for. I saw some of you early on in the chat, seeing this on the outline, excited about it, right? Look, Texas Tech is driving the SEC nuts right now, which I can certainly appreciate. I can certainly appreciate that. And everyone around the country has been asking this question, like, hey, are these new NIL rules enforceable? Can they actually make these be fair market value NIL deals? If they're not, and we're going to live in a world where these things are never really enforceable, the SEC is finding out what that might look like. And then, everybody else in the Big 12, really the whole country, is finding out what this could look like with certain schools who are very well positioned with a big old oil spigot of cash, because we're seeing that with Texas Tech right now. We're seeing that with Texas Tech absolutely driving SEC country nuts. A lot of this starts with my guy, Cody Campbell. I probably can't call him my guy yet, right? I haven't talked to him, but the Big 12, Big 12's best representative on the national stage in college athletics right now, not because of what he is doing necessarily to bankroll Texas Tech, but because he is somebody with a connection to the president who was trying to put him at the head of this presidential commission on college sports, which may or may not happen. But Cody Campbell, multi-billionaire, Texas Tech booster, has been bankrolling the $55 million that Texas Tech paid out to its student athletes this year, which was reported within the last 2 weeks, probably leading the country there. Texas Tech is doing this big, and they are not afraid to go out and take advantage of the rules. And I don't mean that in a bad way, by the way. I mean, just take full advantage of what the system is. And now we're seeing what happens when you do that. So Texas Tech softball, if you weren't paying attention this year, they signed Nyjah Kennedy to a 7-figure NIL deal and then re-signed her to another $1.2 million deal after she almost got them a national championship this year. That made huge headlines. Like, oh man, Texas Tech's willing to put that much into softball. Yeah, that's going to put some schools in a bind, because in this revenue sharing world, 90% of the money is going to football and men's basketball. How much is going to be left over for softball, even for schools that really care about it? Texas Tech has not only picked up Nyjah Kennedy and almost won the national championship, they now have, every single big-time player in the softball transfer portal this year. Here's a little graphic to show you exactly what Texas Tech is doing right now. They've got number 3, number 5, number 6, number 28 in the transfer portal. I believe, when was this graphic? This is June 12th. I think there's another one even after that in the top 10. I think Texas Tech has 4 of the top 10. Red Raider fans, I'm sorry that I don't have that exactly here. I believe Texas Tech has 4 of the top 10 players in the portal, and you see another one there in the top 30 to go along with Canada, who's coming back. So Texas Tech is just completely dominating this. They are building a superstar roster. They're building like a Space Jam type of roster here. Jordan, Ewing, who else is on that? I guess like Muggsy Bogues. I don't, a dream team of sorts to put together in college softball to try and go out and win a national championship. And people can't handle it, man. There is a lot of Twitter drama. Tennessee's head coach was speaking out on this. And I will say, I'm talking mostly about the money here, but Tennessee's coach, Karen Weekly, said, I think we can all agree on 2 things. Women making money in sports is awesome and long overdue, and contacting players before their season ends and signing them to NIL deals before they enter the portal is wrong. She's saying money, she says, quote, money isn't the issue, tampering is. So some of the issues here are being raised about just the fashion in which this happened, not necessarily just that Texas Tech is throwing around this kind of money. So let's take this in 2 different chunks here. I mentioned and kind of teased out, hey, this is kind of a preview of what people might come to expect if Texas Tech has free reign to just continue spending money like this. They could theoretically do this in a lot of different sports if they really wanted to. I'm going to table that for right now. Let's talk about this tampering thing, right? There's been a lot of discussion about like a traveling team coach that supposedly has been working with Texas Tech to help go get some of these players because he'd be the connection there, that some of this happened before their season was over and yada, yada, yada. I don't know the specifics of all of that. I have no reporting to give you on all of that, but I don't know. I read a big, long piece, Sports Illustrated, talked to a lot of sources about basically laying out like that's kind of what happened, but it's not against the rules. I mean, from everything I can see, it would tell you that it's not actually against the rules. Like Texas Tech is not breaking rules here. And of all people, for the messenger to be the SEC on like this is an outrage because look at how Texas Tech is taking advantage of this rule and making a mockery of the sport. This is my response. There's that emoji with the woman going like this. That's my response. What conference has leveraged and twisted rules or gone beyond the rules to leverage and twist whatever it is that they can to their advantage more so than anybody, harder than anybody, better than anybody over the course of time in college athletics, but especially in the last couple of decades? Oh, yeah, that's the SEC. Like pot, meet kettle. What are we doing here? Are we really going to be mad at Texas Tech for taking advantage of this system? It is not Texas Tech's fault that the system exists like this. It is not. It is decades of poor leadership at the NCAA level. There are a number of decisions that have led to this, none of which are specifically about Texas Tech. They're just here taking advantage of where they're at. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Or I used to always hear Danny Parkins, who's one of the best radio hosts in the country, say when he was on his show in Kansas City here, teach me the rules, I'll play the game. Teach Texas Tech the rules, they'll play the game. They're playing that game, baby. The SEC is not used to somebody else deciding to get as low as they might, get down in the dirt the way that they would, try to leverage and bend things as much as they would. Well, now here it is, and you don't like it because it's not somebody that you're used to having to deal with, and it doesn't feel fun. Ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. There's another one. I'm full of these little colloquialisms today, everybody. They're just playing by what the rules are. How can you blame them? Go get a national championship if you can. Jerome Tang said the same thing, by the way, on the 3 Ma podcast, which if you're a K-State fan, you should definitely listen to. But when he came on with us before last season, I know some of you will laugh because of how the season turned out, but he said that about the roster they put together. Hey, we're at a time right now where there's no restriction. Like, we can go buy a national championship roster. Why would we not do that if we can do it? So go try to do it. Texas Tech's just doing it very well and very effectively right now. You know, I thought about this. It's like everybody's always just digging in on what it is that they have as their advantages all the time and playing that up as much as they possibly can. And not everybody has every advantage. Texas Tech, how often, many of you in the chat have probably done this, how often does Texas Tech get crap for like, oh, Lubbock's just out there in the middle of nowhere? Terrible place to go. Middle of nowhere, which Lubbock, by the way, is great. It is hard to get to, but if you've actually been to Lubbock, it's like people who say that have not actually been there. But if you want to say, hey, it's really hard to get to, it's this outpost in West Texas, sucks out there. Texas Tech gets that stereotype, and they get that all the time. But you know what is out in West Texas? Oil. Lots of oil, which means lots of money. And so Texas Tech has some pretty rich boosters because of all that. They don't have the advantage of being in a real sexy, attractive place like Austin or Nashville or wherever it might be. They don't have that advantage. They're not in Columbus, Ohio, a huge major metropolitan area. But what they do have is some oil, and they have guys who are good with it that have a ton of money. And so they're using their advantage. That's their advantage. They're using it. They're playing to it. I don't know. It blows my mind how much of an uproar that there has been about this. And I guess the warning sign here for everybody is this is what it could look like if the enforcement of third-party NIL deals does crumble and fall apart, like many are predicting it will eventually. This is what it could look like. I mean, Texas Tech's already done it. They have the number 1 portal class in football. They have the number 1 portal class in football. They clearly have the number 1 portal class in softball. And they're not doing too shabby in men's basketball either. They're probably going to have a top 10. I would imagine that Tech team is going to be top 10 preseason. when we start the basketball season. Like, get ready. Like, Texas Tech is not afraid to throw around their resources, and you don't have to like that that's the current state and setup of college athletics, but please don't take that out on Texas Tech. I mean, don't take that out that Texas Tech is like ruining the sanctity of the sport or the integrity of what. Guys, that has been ruined by forces that are well beyond Texas Tech. And Tech is just taking advantage of the situation that they have been put in and that everybody has been put in. Okay. So I don't know. I don't think you have to know a ton about softball and a ton about how all this is happening to really arrive at that conclusion. Okay. That would be my take and opinion here. And it is just very rich that so much of this has come from the one conference that, was better than anybody else at doing the under the table bags of cash, that has benefited more from, oh, hey, you're a brand, you have history and tradition, so we're going to continue to boost up your team this year, even if they are not as deserving or as good. Those are the advantages the SEC has played to forever. You're just upset that somebody outside your circle has now found a way to leverage their advantages in a way that makes your life more difficult. That's what's happening here. Good show tonight. Appreciate everybody for being here. Please like the video before you hop out of here. Please subscribe to the channel. All of that really helps. Subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. That's at ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com. Thank you to everybody who does that. And John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you want to leave me a question or comment there, if you're not here live, I will kick off the next show with your question or comment if you do drop it at John-Kurtz-4. Okay. I think that's going to wrap it up here. I'm trying to think if there's any other housekeeping I have for you guys. Don't know that there is. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Keep pushing forward here. Doldrums of the offseason, mid-June. Big 12 Media Days is on the horizon, people. So that will kickstart a lot of things, get us some good content. But we'll keep it rolling here on the channel. Thank you all for being here. Take care. Enjoy the beginning of your week, and I will talk to you all very soon.